Hi Little Mead, you ready for another chapter of Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing by Judy Blume. It's a story about Peter here, who's 9, and his little brother Farley Drexel, who everybody calls Fudge. And Fudge is a bit of a pain, he's 2.5. Here Peter is holding his little turtle, who he calls Dribble. Now Fudge has decided to stop eating, which is worrying Peter and Fudge's mum. And if you don't know the start of the story, this family live in New York City. But the next morning, I put my foot down. No, I don't want to stand on my head in the kitchen or anywhere else, I added. And if I don't hurry, I'll be late for school. Don't you care if your brother starves? No, I told her. Peter, what an awful thing to say. Oh, he'll eat when he gets hungry. Why don't you just leave him alone? That afternoon, when I came home from school, I found my brother on the kitchen floor, playing with boxes of cereals and raisins and dried apricots. My mom was begging him to eat. No, 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 Fudge shouted. He made a terrible mess, dumping everything on the floor. Please stand on your head, Peter, my mother said. It's the only way he'll eat. No, I told her, I'm not going to stand on my head any more. I went into my room and slammed the door. I played with Dribble until supper time. Nobody ever worries about me the way they worry about Fudge. If I decided not to eat, they probably wouldn't even notice. That night, during dinner, Fudge hid under the kitchen table. He said, I'm a doggy, woof, woof, woof. It was hard to eat with him under the table, pulling on my legs. I waited for my father to say something, but he didn't. Finally, my mom jumped up. I know, she said. If Fudgy's a doggy, he wants to eat on the floor, right? Now, if you ask me, Fudge never even thought about that, but he liked the idea a lot. He barked and nodded his head. So my mom fixed his plate and put it under the table. Then she reached down and petted him like he was a real dog. My father said, Aren't we carrying this a little too far? My mother didn't answer. Fudge ate 2 bites of his dinner. My mother was satisfied. After a week of having him eat under the table, I felt like we really did have a family dog. I thought how great it would be if we could trade in Fudge for a nice Cocker Spaniel. That would solve all my problems. I'd walk him and feed him and play with him. He could even sleep on the edge of my bed at night. But, of course, that was wishful thinking. My brother's here to stay, and there's nothing much I can do about it. Grandma came over with a million ideas about how to get Fudge to eat. She tricked him by making milkshakes in the blender, and when Fudge wasn't looking, she threw in an egg. Then she told him if he drank it all up, there'd be a surprise at the bottom of the glass. Now, the first time he believed her. He finished his milkshake, but all he saw was an empty glass. There wasn't any surprise, and Fudge got so mad he threw the glass down and it smashed into little pieces. After that, Grandma left. The next day, my mother dragged Fudge to Dr. Cohn's office. He told her to leave him alone, that Fudge would eat when he got hungry. I reminded my mother that I'd told her the same thing, and for free. But I guess my mother didn't believe either one of us, because she took Fudge to see 3 more doctors. None of them could find a thing wrong with my brother. One doctor even suggested that my mother cook Fudge his favorite foods. So that night my mother broiled lamb chops just for Fudge. The rest of us ate stew. She served him the 2 little lamb chops on his plate under the table. Oh, just the smell of them was enough to make my stomach growl. I thought it was mean of my mom to make them for Fudge and not for me. Fudge looked at his lamb chops for a few minutes. Then he pushed his plate away. No, he said. No chops. Fudgy, you'll starve, my mother cried. You must eat. No chops. Cornflakes, Fudge said. Want cornflakes. My mother ran to get cereal for Fudge. You can eat the chops if you want them, Peter. she told me. I reached down and helped myself to lamb chops. My mom handed Fudge his bowl of cereal, but he didn't eat it. He sat at my feet and looked up at me. He watched me eat his chops. Eat your cereal, my father said. No eat cereal, Fudge yelled. My father was really mad. His face turned bright red and he said, Fudge, you'll eat that cereal or you will wear it. This was turning out to be fun after all, I thought. And the lamb chops were really tasty. I dipped the bone in some ketchup and chewed away. Fudge messed around with his cereal for a minute. Then he looked at my father and said, No eat, no eat, no eat. My father wiped his mouth with his napkin, pushed back his chair, got up from the table. He picked up the bowl of cereal in one hand and Fudge in the other. He carried them both into the bathroom. I went along, nibbling on a bone to see what was going to happen. My father stood Fudge in the bath and dumped the whole bowl of cereal right over his head. Fudge screamed. He sure can scream loud. My father motioned for me to go back to the kitchen. He joined us in a minute. We sat down and finished our dinner, and Fudge kept on screaming. My mother wanted to go to him, but my father told her to stay where she was. He'd had enough of Fudge's monkey business at meal times. I think my mother really was relieved that my father had finally taken over. For once my brother got what he deserved, and I was glad. The next day, Fudge sat at the table again, in his red little booster chair where he belongs. He ate everything my mother put in front of him. No more doggy, he told us. And for a long time afterwards, his favorite expression was, eat it or wear it, eat it or wear it. Chapter 4 is called My Brother, the Bird. We live near Central Park. So remember, this story is set in New York City, a really crowded, huge city, but it has a massive park in the middle. It's miles and miles. It's huge. It's a rectangular park, but it's really big. And a lot of families who live in the apartments around don't have a garden, so they go to Central Park. We live near Central Park. On nice days, I like to play there after school. I'm allowed to walk over by myself as long as I'm going to be with friends. My mother doesn't want me hanging around the park alone. For one thing, Jimmy Fargo has been mugged 3 times, twice for his bicycle and once for his money. Only he didn't have any money to give the muggers. I've never been mugged, but sooner or later I probably will be. My father's told me what to do. Give the muggers whatever they want and try not to get hit on the head. Sometimes after you've been mugged, you get to go to the police headquarters and look at a bunch of pictures of crooks to see if you can recognize the guys that mugged you. I think it'd be neat to look at all those pictures. It's not that I want to get mugged, because that could be really scary. It's just that Jimmy Fargo's always talking about his visit to the police headquarters. My father got mugged once in a subway. So the subway, it's like an underground tunnel, by 2 girls and a guy. They took his wallet and his briefcase. He still travels around by subways, but my mother doesn't. She sticks to buses and taxis. Okay, when I said subway, I said underground tunnel. A subway is an underground tunnel, but also in New York City, the subway is their underground train. So in London, we have the Underground, which is the underground trains. And in New York City, their underground trains are called a subway. So Peter's dad still goes on the subway, but the experience of him being mugged now means his mum doesn't. She's too scared. She sticks to buses and taxis. Both my mom and my father are always warning me never to talk to strangers in the park. Anyway, we live on the west side of the park. If I want to get to the zoo and the pony carts, I have to walk all the way through to the east side. Sometimes my mother walks across the park with Fudge. He likes the animals a lot, especially the monkeys. He also likes the helium-filled balloons, but as soon as my mother buys him one, he lets it go. I think he likes to see it float up in the sky. My mom says that's a waste of money, and she's not going to buy him any more balloons until he promises not to let go. On Sundays, the park is closed to traffic, And you can ride your bicycle all over without worrying about being run over by some crazy driver. Even Fudge can ride. He has a little blue toddler bike, a present from my father's client. And when he's riding, he makes motorcycle noises. Vroom, vroom, he yells. In the fall, that's the autumn, the leaves turn darker and drop off the trees, and sometimes there's big leaf piles on the ground, and it's fun to jump around in them. I never saw bright red, yellow, and orange leaves until the day my father took us for a drive in the country. The reason the leaves don't turn bright colors in New York is the air pollution, and that's too bad, because yellow and orange and red leaves look really neat. One sunny afternoon, I called for Jimmy Fargo, and we went to the park. Jimmy is the only kid on my block who's in my class at school, unless you count Sheila, and I don't. She lives in my building on the 10th floor, and Henry, the elevator operator, is always making jokes about me and Sheila. He thinks we like each other. Truth is, I can't stand her. She's a real know-it-all, but I've discovered that most girls are. The worst thing about Sheila is the way she's always trying to touch me. And when she does, she yells, "Peter's got the cuties, Peter's got the cuties." I don't believe in cooties anymore. The cooties are just like germs. It's just the way American children tease each other. When I was in 2nd grade, I used to examine myself to see if I had them, but I never found any. By 4th grade, most kids give up on cooties. Oh, but not Sheila. She's still going strong, so I have to keep a distance from her. My mother thinks Sheila is the greatest. She's so smart, my mother says, and someday she's going to be a real beauty. Now that's the funniest, because Sheila looks a lot like the monkeys that Fudge is so crazy about. So maybe she'll look beautiful to some ape, but never to me. Me and Jimmy have this special group of rocks where we like to play when we're in the park. We play secret agent up there. Jimmy can imitate all kinds of foreign accents, probably because his father's a part-time actor. When he's not acting, he teaches a class at City College. Today, when we got to our rocks, who should be perched up there but Sheila? She was pretending to read a book, but I think she was just waiting for me and Jimmy to find out what we'd do when we found her on our personal rocks. "Hey, Sheila," I said, "those are our rocks." "Says who?" she asked. "Oh, come on, Sheila," Jimmy said, climbing up. "You know me and Peter hang out here." "Oh, too bad for you," Sheila said. "Oh, Sheila," I shouted, "go find yourself another rock." "I like this one," she said, as if she owned the park. "So why don't you two go find another rock?" Just then, who should come tearing down the path but Fudge. My mother was right behind him, hollering, "Fudgy, wait for Mommy." But when Fudge gets going, he doesn't wait for anybody. He was after some pigeons. "Birdie, here, Birdie," he called. That brother of mine, he loves birds. He can't get it through his head that the birds aren't about to let him catch them. "Hi, Mom," I said. My mom stopped running. "Oh, Peter, am I glad to see you. I can't keep up with Fudge." "Mrs. Hatcher, Mrs. Hatcher," Sheila called, scrambling down from our rock. "I'll watch Fudge for you. I'll take very good care of him. Can I, Mrs. Hatcher? Oh, please." Sheila jumped up and down and begged some more. Jimmy gave me an elbow in the ribs. He thought that my mom would let Sheila watch Fudge and we'd be rid of her. We'd be free to play secret agent again. But Jimmy didn't know that my mother would never trust Sheila with her dear little boy. Fudge, in the meantime, was screaming, "Come back, Birdie! Come back to Fudgy!" Then my mother did a strange thing. She checked her watch and said, "You know, I do have to run back to the apartment. I forgot to turn on the oven. Do you really think you could keep an eye on Fudge for just 10 minutes? "Of course I can, Mrs. Hatcher," Sheila said. "I know all about babysitting for my sister." Sheila's sister, Libby, is in 7th grade. She's as bad as beautiful as Sheila. The only difference is she's bigger. My mother hesitated. "I don't know," she said. "I've never left Fudge before." She looked at me. "Peter?" "What?" "Will you and Jimmy help Sheila watch Fudge while I run home for a minute?" "Oh, Mom, do we have to?" "Oh, please, Peter, I'll be right back. I feel better if all 3 of you are watching him." Okay, I'm going to stop there. Okay, so Peter's mom's going back to the apartment. there's going to be trouble. It's never, and nothing ever goes right when Fudge is involved. Find out tomorrow what happens in the park. Bye.